Actually, I got my doctorate.
Yeah.
And my name is Debra Livingston,
Mm-hmm.
and we're actually related to Dr. Livingston, the famous Dr. Livingston, way back, but yeah, we're related to him. So I'm a photo media artist. I did start very early in the days. I worked at QCA, where was analogue photography in those days, and I did very well through that, and I used to teach there as well. So but we used to have to clean out all the chemicals, the huge chemicals that they use for producing photographs. So, and it's quite dangerous, I'm sure, because we never wore masks or anything like that in those days. So I also had my own little studio, darkroom studio at home. So I won a few awards in black and white photography in those days. So I taught for 10 years in photography. That was while I also did my masters, my bachelor, masters, 2 masters, and then I came to Sunshine Coast and did my doctorate here. I taught both design and photography, but in my last 2 years, before retirement, I taught just photography and had wonderful classes. Oh, the early days, I was actually a designer, illustrator. So I had my own business, but also I worked for a lot of agencies as well as a freelancer. Yeah, and that was good as well, because I had a son, so I was a single mum at the time, so I was able to stay home with him and also work at the same time.
In Brisbane or Sydney?
In Brisbane. It was in Brisbane, sorry. But my family are in Tasmania, so I moved up to Sydney, where I worked for the Australian Broadcasting Commission. But I always knew that I wanted to be an artist. That was the main thing. So it took quite some time for me to do it. But once I came to Brisbane, I went to QCA, Queensland College of Art, and that's where my journey actually started. Yeah. I was employed to teach design to photographers, and I had some amazing photographers. I used to have a group of photographers that used to photograph. They were police photographers, so they would go and photograph all the accidents and issues to do around, any police work. So I taught them design.
How did they use that?
Some of them had their own business cards, and then one of them I also worked for as a designer, because they had a little property where they let out, bed and breakfast. So I did some work for him. So that was quite a good meeting, but through that I became to love photography and found that I was probably better at it. Might not be, but I really picked it up very quickly and I loved it, yeah. So I did my first masters there, and my first exhibition, which there was one that went to Perth. It was what's called a college or university exhibition, where students from all over Australia used to exhibit. So I exhibited there and a few other places as well during that time. Yeah. I came across a group of people who exhibited, like it was just a whole group, and they all helped each other. And they had exhibitions in the US, and they put on themed exhibitions. So you were chosen, like people would submit their work and you would be chosen to exhibit. And so quite a few of them I was chosen to actually exhibit in the US. One was contemporary, 33 contemporary, so Chicago, But also I was selected in the head-on photography festival. They have a yearly annual festival in Sydney, that's one thing that I really want to be able to achieve, is to get further with that particular competition. I was selected as a finalist, and so that piece of work went to India, went to the US, and travelled around the world. So, yeah, with the rest of them. So I was very lucky at that time to. Now, it was a very unusual piece of work because it's very conceptual. You need to be very conceptual. So that piece of work, my partner or friend, I went into his bedroom one morning, and the stream of light was just streaming across his body, and he had a purple or mauve eider down, and he was just lying back, like one of those things you see on coffins years ago, where they used to have the person lying on top, made of sculpture, and it just looked like that. So I was so lucky. I went and grabbed my camera, and I so quickly went and photographed it, and I managed to get it, because after a few seconds he moved, and so so there was all this light falling over, and that was the one that was selected for a finalist. I've had 2 other selections in that particular festival, but as a semi-finalist, so therefore they project it up on big screens, so they don't go anywhere though. They on the day they're actually, through that festival time, they're actually shown. So I've had 2 also shown there as well. I'd like to get to the stage where I can actually win a portrait, but it's very conceptual, and you're competing against a global world, global photographers. So I was very lucky to be able to get that particular shot that time. So I'm very keen on, very keen on portraiture, but it's only when you meet somebody that you know whether you're going to be able to get the shot or not. And it takes a long time to create a relationship with that person, so they feel very comfortable with you, to be able to relax. And because when you go and photograph people, the first thing they're going to do is smile, isn't it? And smile at you, and this is not what you want. You want them to be relaxed, you want them to be doing something, you want them to be, and you want to photograph them in their own environment, and so, so one of my favourite things is portraits, but also the climate, so nature. I love nature, and I think it's so important for us to keep pushing the fact that we need to look after nature, our environment. Since I was a child, I was always interested in animals, and I used to collect, when I found a deceased bird, and my father would give me some little possums and little rabbits, which were, you weren't allowed to have rabbits, but and I would look after them, and I would collect dead insects, but when I came here to Sunshine Coast, I collected more of them. So I've got a whole collection in little bottles of insects and things like that. And so the idea came when I travelled to Tasmania in 2022, I think it was, to see my father for the last time, and it rained here. We had the floods. Do you remember the floods? They were just dreadful. It just rained and rained. It just didn't stop. When I came back, I saw that all the beautiful leaves and flowers were all squished and looked horrible, and all, dysfunctioning. There weren't flowers anymore. Even the ones on the bushes were all, disintegrating. So when I saw that, I thought, oh, I've got an idea, you know, to mix flowers and things in water, and I'd leave them for at least 2 weeks, and they became transparent. Yeah, they're beautifully transparent. And some of the flowers you could see through to the bottom, so underneath you could see even more nature. Yeah. So I got a lot of the plants and tried to get plants that were indigenous as much as possible, which is not always, not always able to do that. But what I photographed was these beautiful transparent flowers and plants, and then I put my and they floated really nicely, the butterflies that I had collected, and put them on top of the water. And I photographed them because what I felt was the rain had killed so many livestock and destroyed so much of nature and insects, which are so important in our world. For us to survive, for the world to survive, we need insects. And that was mainly my idea or concept behind that, was to try and make people aware of the fact that we need to nurture these, our microenvironments. And I put them in a circle, because that's when I was looking through it, my lens, he was in a circle. So I thought, well, this is an idea, just, so people actually focus instead of having a wide-angle picture. I put it in a circle, popped in a circle, so people would focus and see what I saw through the lens, to do that. Now, I have also was selected again this year with I have another lot, which I did, slightly different, but along the same themes of, caring for our insect life. And our bird life. I mean, we had a bird kamikaze on our window, so I photographed it, and so I used that as part of the new series of work, which was also accepted at the Head On, because they have 2 sections at Head On. They have a section where they select people to exhibit, and they print them, and and it's at the Bondi Pavilion. And then they have another lot which is called which is sort of a semi-finalist lot, which is what I was. And you have to find your own or you can group up with people in Sydney and exhibit, but you have to find your own exhibition space, your own gallery, and they're just extremely expensive. They're all basically photographed, Well, the ones, especially the ones that they're photographed. There's a couple of, with the new series, there's a couple of just digital ones, but no, they're all photographed, The only thing I do in Photoshop is just lift a colour, or the same thing we used to do in analogue, bit of dodging and burning, that sort of thing. So we used to do that even in analogue. So there's no difference really. I don't use a lot of layering. I prefer to be fairly as pure as I can be with a photograph or with the idea. Well, the funny thing is, I was at QCA, I was working, and I won an award, and what I got was a little Kodak digital camera. I think it was only a few megapixel, but I started using it, as a quick thing, as you do. And that was basically the time, but they were very expensive. You really couldn't afford them, $10,000 or $20,000. So it took me quite some time to actually get my first digital camera. And I think it was a Nikon D100. And I can't remember how many megapixel it was, but I used that, but I do still have analog cameras, and lots of film, and I just gave away my enlarger just a couple of years ago, because I knew I wouldn't be doing, if I did, with film, you can digitize film, so I have all my scanners and things like that I digitize with, so I gave all that away, Had packets of stuff, for analogue, and I sold all of those, so they're gone now. Because too, the chemicals are not so great for you. Yeah. I don't think it'll ever die. I mean, they still produce all the chemicals and stuff for it, but it's only those people who are dedicated to that's what they want to do. Yeah. But I do like digital. Yeah. I only see AI fitting into my space when I'm designing, because I want something quick. I don't want to spend hours and hours, not anymore. I mean, I used to, but not anymore. So if I need an idea, like I was doing some tattoos, and I created a piece of work with a skull and some flowers in the skull, but I scanned it and put it up on AI, and one of the AI programs, and it brought back some amazing tattoos. But it's from my own work. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would sometimes produce work, illustrate it, and then upload it to AI, one of the AI software apps, and then I would ask it, I would tell it what to do, and it would do it for me. Then you just choose one, and then you keep producing it. So I have no issue with AI on those terms. I don't think that pure photography will ever die. And you can tell the difference. There's a huge difference between, what is AI, although I did hear of one winning an award a year ago, last year I think it was, and they had to fess up that it was AI. And I think they have to put rules into place, because they can produce some beautiful things. Yeah, and I know that it gets a lot of things from all over the place, but I'm not sure when you put your own work up there how it seems to determine what you're actually thinking. I do still a lot of work. I mean, I have played around with some AI just to make sure that I know how it's all working. And I think designers would find that they can produce something and then reproduce it by their hands. What I'm looking for is conceptual, to be able to tell that story, to be able to put across something that is important. And even with portraiture, I think that's important, to put across something, to tell something about that person. Yeah, everyone has a story. Yeah, and it's getting that story from them, to be able to, photograph them. I photographed a beautiful shot of my family one day. They just grabbed my iPad and was looking through it, and the light coming off the iPad, and that was selected as a semi-finalist, that one. Yeah. So yeah, I've done well, but I haven't got to the stage where I want to be at. Yeah. I think too, the retiring, you miss the comradeship of your peers, but also you met a lot of people, whereas now you don't meet as many. I mean, I used to go to conferences in Sydney, in Melbourne, and that's not happening now. Very regional, but there's not a lot of photographers here that are conceptual. The art of photography. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't really want to do any commercial photography, although I could. Yeah, I do a bit of illustration. So I still work on, I like crafts, so I work on crafts, but also before I left uni, we were doing printmaking, so I was teaching the students printmaking, and what this did was to actually enhance their design. So it took their design in another place, so you don't always rely on a computer, that you can actually create beautiful things by using a printer. Lino prints, we used to do lino prints, we used to do printing on t-shirts. And we used green prints, but they were different. We used, you know, those big brown steel things on the ground, you know, manholes and all those sort of things. So the rubbings, so we did a lot of those. So that was a lot of fun. Just really art-based, stuff that they then transposed into product. So they used those in, you know, like packaging, particularly packaging or labelling, or, you know, many other things that you can use that for once you scan them. And they were absolutely wonderful. They had such a difference than the kind of digital, you know, illustrated, using Illustrator or Photoshop. They were just so different, which gave those students a little extra, you know, so that was very enjoyable. That message is to, once again, there's the exhibition that I have on now at the library, at the Maroochydore Library, is to have a message behind it. I'd rather have a message behind, you know, everything that I do. And sometimes the hardest thing is coming up with the concept, you know, coming up with the idea, and then how to go about doing it, and how to bring it forward. And that is often, you know, like the hardest thing to actually do. You know, I was just very lucky that I had all these things available to be able to use them. And I don't know why I collect insects. So it's just beautiful, you know, butterflies are just gorgeous. I'd still like to do portraiture. I'm still very interested in it, and I've eyed off a few people to creating a relationship with them that I know who are different, people that are culturally different, diverse. So diversity is really important. And, you know, someone or people who have that story. Yeah, I had a photographed fellow who had run in front of a train and he told me his story, and that he'd been abused as a young child. So he tried to commit suicide, and he ran in front of a train, and because he was running, he survived. Yeah, the train just... And so he told me his story. So how I photographed that was, he was, you know, we used black and we used rose petals, because that was the spiritual journey, to, you know, to get rid of all that horror that he'd experienced in his life. And so he was catching them, throwing them up and catching them as they were coming down. It was a beautiful photograph, yeah. The thing is about design, you have to be careful that you don't design your photograph too much. Yeah, because that can then place it into the commercial realm. So you have to be really careful of that. The thing that really helped me was the fact of I learned about colour, I learned about light, and to bring all that combination together, the experiences that I've had in terms of growing up with, you know, colour and light and, you know, learning all of that and experiencing it and doing it, made me far more creative. So when I was really young, so I would have been 3, so we moved from the city in Hobart, Tasmania, to the country, and the country was in the Huon Valley in Cygnet, Tasmania, in a little place called Leamington. There's such a big difference from the city to the country. The rolling hills, there are apple orchards, so this is my first connection with nature. And streams and all those sort of things, and this is where I started collecting, you know, insects and dead birds when I found them with nests. Anyway, the house the walls were not painted, they were just bare. No, you know, just these brown walls that were totally unpainted. And my brother drew a farm. So it might have been 4 then, you know. He drew a farm on the wall, and I copied him. And I knew straight away that's what I wanted. Oh, I can do that. And I was younger than he was. So I drew exactly what he drew, And I copied it, and I could do it. And I said, "This is what I want to be. I want to be an artist when I grow up." And that's since then I've always, no. In those days though, because it was in the 50s, we didn't have things like papers and pencils or anything like that. My dad brought me home a big book from where he worked, and I had these terrible pens, the ones that smelled really. So I used to draw with those, and I would start drawing everything, and I just never stopped. I didn't stop, and just didn't stop drawing ever since. And I used to get big things on my hands. And I became allergic to chalk and things like that, because that's all I ever did. So I did, my whole life was drawing and doing, drawing what was around me, like the animals, the trees, the flowers, the clouds, everything. So that's where my love for nature came in. Yes, I'd like to become well known for my work. That's before I pass over to this world. That would be very nice. That's what I'm aiming for. It's taken a long time, but it's been a long journey. Worth every pen, every pencil, every paintbrush, every film, every pixel.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.